There we go. Hello. Welcome, welcome. We're so glad you guys are here today. And to get started, if you could all check in, that would be great. Checking in allows us to know who's here and to be able to report out to the grant that's offering this workshop at no cost to you. It gives us the opportunity to report out to the grant some information. So if you could check in, you can either use the QR code that is on your screen right now, or you can use the link. Sharon Kwan has dropped the link right into the chat, and you can use that to check in. We are doing job search essentials today. And also, by capturing the QR code and checking in or checking in on the link, you will get an email following this webinar today with a ton of resources that I'll mention throughout the workshop, and also a link to the recording of this workshop. And so I encourage you all to take notes today. And also you're going to get resources afterwards where you can either watch back the webinar, any pieces that you'd like, and then also a checklist with some information and some additional resources. And but what I'd like to do to get started is if you could open the chat. The chat is how we're going to engage today. It's the way that we're going to talk. You can ask questions. We'll have discussions. I have some activities I'm going to utilize the chat for. So go ahead and open up your chat box. It's on the bottom of your screen if you're on a computer. If you're on a phone, sometimes it's up in the right-hand corner. Sometimes there's 3 dots, and you can do a drop down and you can see the chat. So different places, but if you're on a laptop or a computer, usually it's on the bottom of your screen, and you can open the chat box and then just do what some of the other people have done here. Tiffany, welcome. Oh, Tiffany is from DERS, which is the state of Arizona. And so welcome. Let us know where you're at. Hi, Liz. Good to see you. Haley is from Payson. Good morning, you guys. And so take a look. Brenda, AJ, Apache Junction. We have people from all over Arizona and more, inside of Arizona and outside. Welcome you all. Glad you're joining us here today. And my name is Jessica Pierce, and I am the founder and CEO of a nonprofit organization called Career Connectors, and which I launched in the middle of the Great Recession back in 2009, after dealing with a layoff myself. And then a couple years later, after the layoff, I had to shut down my small business because of the Great Recession. And at that same time, my husband was laid off 3 times in 6 months from his corporate recruiting job. And so when we were sitting there in 2009, looking at each other like, what is happening to our world? We just had no idea. Both of us had been working since we were about 14 years old. And so as we were sitting there at the dinner table one night, looking at each other and like, what do we do? What's going on? Our kids at the time were, we have 3. And at the time they were an infant, a 2-year-old and a 10-year-old. And we just didn't know what to do. And so I didn't at that time know about all the resources that are offered throughout the state of Arizona and then also nationally. And so I just kind of looked around and saw a ton of people getting laid off that had never dealt with layoffs before. And that's when I decided to just help some people write some resumes. And so I went to my local church and said, can I have a room in the back of the church and offer resume assistance? And they said, yes, we need help. People are calling us and we're not really sure what to do. And so from there, I started helping people write resumes, started bringing in speakers and coaches and experts and hiring companies. And up to date, we've now served just over 75,000 people. So I'm exceedingly grateful that I get to lead this organization, but also am grateful now, sitting in the seat, that I did have to deal with a layoff back in 2007, and that I did have to close a small business in 2009. Because if I would not have had to do those things, I would not be able to serve in this capacity in this way. So regardless of what your story is today, and if you're either actively looking for a job or considering it, it feels hard and often it feels lonely. And so what we're going to do here today is give you some baseline job search essentials. how to think about your job search as if you were the hiring manager. What is our hiring manager looking for? What kind of fit are they looking for the companies? And we're here to give you some hope on that, because there is hope. There are jobs, there are things available. And so we're going to dial that in today a little bit. So again, my name is Jessica Pierce. Honored to be with each of you today. Please use the chat as much as you can, asking questions, whatever, you can throw it in the chat, and I will be watching the chat on and off. It's off to my screen on my left. So if you see me looking off to the side, that's why. But I'll be watching that occasionally as I'm going through the workshop today. So feel free to throw things in there and ask. I want to just do a special shout out to Arizona at Work, Pinal County. So Arizona at Work is the workforce agency in Arizona that offers job resources, tons of services. And there is a county here called Pinal County, and they have sponsored these workshops through May, and they are for the residents of Pinal County. And then they offered for us to open them up to anyone outside of Pinal County, whether you're in Arizona or not. So thank you, Arizona at Work, Pinal County, for offering these. And that is one of the reasons we are asking you guys to make sure you check in so we have the information. So if these workshops, they are coming to an end in May, we would love to continue them in some capacity. And we are going to go out and work with Pinal County as well as other counties and cities in Arizona and to see if there's sponsorship opportunities, but we can't do it without the data. So again, please check in so that we have the information, we know where our people are coming from, and so we can go after those grants. Today, job search essentials, we're going to talk about the market, some trends. We're just going to spend a few minutes on this. We'll talk about Arizona, and we'll also talk about nationally. So if you're not in Arizona, it's okay. You're still in the right place. You're going to get a lot of great information today. And then the second piece is really honing in on what do hiring managers look for? What, from a competence, character, and chemistry standpoint, what do they all look for when they're hiring? And then we're going to talk about some job search tools. And we won't do a deep dive on any of these, but we will do an overview on each of them. And then we have some additional workshops coming up if you're interested, where we'll do a deep dive on those. And again, sponsored by Arizona at Work, Pinal County. Okay, you guys, so let's talk about the market. All right, I'm gonna spend a few minutes just talking about Arizona, because again, this sponsoring organization is Arizona at Work, Pinal County, and then I'm gonna talk about the national landscape. Here's the thing, regardless of any thoughts you have around what's going on in our political landscape, regardless, it can feel scary. There's a lot out there right now about layoffs and jobs and stuff. And so listen, first thing I want you to always think about is go to the data. What does the data actually say? The actual data that is posted and out there. So here is the thing. These numbers are from February. We are at about a 4% unemployment rate. That's Arizona. And so and you'll see on the next slide where everyone is from a national standpoint. It is still a low unemployment rate. There are some sectors of business that in the economy, industries that have been affected. And obviously government has been affected. But here's the thing, the layoffs that have happened on the government side, at the same time that has happened, the job growth numbers have increased. And so it is very typical for us to see one or two industries doing layoffs and other industries growing. So it just seems dramatic right now because it's in the media. So forward, everyone's seeing it. So just don't let that information really put you into a spiral. I've been interviewed by media, by newspapers, a whole bunch of and I'm like, listen, the only time I've ever been really kind of like, what is going on is during COVID, because nobody knew what was going on then. And it felt like everybody no longer had a job or had to work completely differently. That is not what's happening right now. And so just if you start to spiral and get into fear mode, just take a breath, maybe turn the TV off. And my husband's a therapist. And during the COVID year, that time, I'm sure you may remember if you were watching TV, there was a ticker of, how many people were affected by COVID. And yeah, it was really hard and really, really dramatic what was happening. And also at the same time, because of that ticker that was on TV, it was affecting people mentally at dramatic rates. And so I just tell you that because take a step away from getting too swept up in that kind of stuff, because the job market hasn't actually changed too much when you look at the data. The industries that are affected have been affected or have changed a little bit. So we're Arizona and nationally, we're running about a 4% unemployment rate, which has been pretty steady for a long time. Arizona was at a 3.5 for a while, so we did tick up a little bit, but we're right there within the national, and that 4% is really where the national is. You can see an increase in layoffs. You will see that. That is true. That is happening. But you're also seeing an increase in job growth. It's just different industries. And so for specifically Arizona, our population growth will continue. And it's expected that we're going to have 500,000 new jobs by 2032. And if you look on the right side of your screen, you're going to see the industries that are growing. Education and healthcare, those are growing. Those have been growing for many years. And then business services and advanced manufacturing, also really great industries to look into that are growing and have been for a long time. So here is, from a national standpoint, these are the rankings of states around, best ranking from an employment standpoint and then to the worst. So regardless of where you're from, you can kind of get a feel, an idea. Not every single state is listed on this just because it would be hard to read. But you can kind of get a feel for where do we fall. And Arizona, we're in the middle. We fall in the middle as far as comes unemployment. North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska always are at the really, high levels, because the reality is people don't love living there. And so they always have really low unemployment. There are a lot of jobs. And so you can see where unemployment rates fall here. But here's the other thing. I know when you're unemployed and when you don't have a job, here's what I know. It's scary. The unemployment rate doesn't matter because you're one, and that equals 100%. So I get that. I want to show you the unemployment rates to help you understand we're not in a crisis situation. There are jobs out there. A lot of good jobs, actually, really good jobs. And then if you are in a state that has significant unemployment, then that might be something you're like, do I need to think about remote opportunities? Do I need to think about my job search a little bit differently? And so that's also a reality to think about. Okay, so that's just a high level on employment. Some of the trends that we're seeing for this year. One is that Gen Z, which are kids, they're young professionals now, born between 1997 and 2013. They are fully in the workforce now. 27% of our workforce by the end of the year will be Gen Z. And I think that's so important for all of us to understand. I believe we have some Gen Z folks on the phone right now, but it's so important for us to understand because Gen Z reacts to and does work differently than the millennial generation, than Gen X, than baby boomers. They do it differently. And so we have to be willing to adapt and then at the same time mentor and help Gen Z as they're coming into the workforce. Not better, not worse, different. I remember walking into Intel when I was 24 years old. So if I was a Gen, if I was a Gen Z or Gen Z is coming into the workforce, they're in their 20s right now, late teens, early 20s. I remember walking into Intel when I was 24 years old and going, it was the job I wanted. It was like on paper, it was exactly the job I wanted. I got it. And I walked in and first day, I am going to retire here. I remember being so excited, 24 years old, deciding this is where I was going to retire. That is not what's happening with Gen Z. Gen Z is coming in for the most part and like, hey, it's a good job. I'll be here for maybe a couple years. And also, I'm going to have this side gig, and when I need extra money, I'm gonna run Uber Eats, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do all these other things. And I remember when I was 24 years old, one of the employment agreements that I had to sign was that I would not work or not work anywhere else and not run a business. Isn't that crazy to think about? Those were employment agreements we had then. Such a different mentality of work. And then there is this huge growth of artificial intelligence. It is completely changing the way business does business. And so I'm going to encourage you to get on that bandwagon if you're not already. It's going to not only help your job search, it's going to streamline your job search. It's going to make you a stronger, better candidate. And it's going to help you understand AI as you're going into the workforce, as you're getting a new job, because everyone's going to have a baseline knowledge of AI and artificial intelligence. The other thing that we're seeing growth in and trending is a hybrid workforce. So remote for sure, we still have that, but there is a growth for companies to have hybrid employment, which means in the office some, in remote some. Even though fully remote is still out there and is happening, a lot of companies want their people in occasionally. And so that's where hybrid is growing as compared to remote. But still out there, if you're in a place where you want to work remote and that is a focus, then you got to make sure that is targeted and written down on your plan and a priority. Then those are the type of jobs you can go look for. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then the other thing that is a trend is the focus for employers on mental health, which in my opinion is a great thing. I have seen, and so probably have you, some real drastic issues when it comes to our mental health crisis in America. And so this is a good thing. You'll see some maybe programming with companies. There's flexible work schedules because of this, which is another huge benefit. So there is a lot happening in the mental health space. So there are just some trends I wanted to give you all as we got into this. I wanted your brains to be thinking, hey, what does the landscape look like? And we can like dial it down a little bit, like lose some of our anxiety and start to feel hopeful. And then just to understand what some of the trends are, because if you understand these trends, then you'll understand a little bit more while I dive into some of the tools later on. So that's our baseline. Now let's get into the hiring process, to get into the essentials of job search. And when you are job searching, why I want you to be thinking about your job search like you are the hiring manager. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Because when a hiring manager is looking to hire somebody, there's three kind of main buckets they look at. The first one is, can you do the job? That is competence. Do they have the ability? Do they have the skills and the knowledge and the understanding on can they do the job? And then they look at, are they a match for our company? From a character standpoint, do they kind of have the same values, or could they fit in here? And the third one is, do I like them? Can I work with them? So there are three main components that make up that match, that culture match. We're going to discuss those today. So a little bit on what it looks like from a recruiting standpoint. We'll talk about the three main areas, the three main buckets, and then how you get to the culture match, because you want to be the one that they say this person's a match for us. So have you ever felt like when you were applying for a job, you hit submit to send your resume somewhere? And have you ever felt like it goes into the black hole of death and I never hear back? Anyone ever felt like that? That is valid. We know a lot of you. Yes, Karen, ghosted. Yes, Liz. Like, you put a resume in and you're like, well, I'll probably never hear back from them, or even get to an interview and still never hear back. Well, here's the thing. The recruiting process for companies can be often very complex. It doesn't, whether they're a small company or a large company, it doesn't matter. Everyone is different, but they can be very complex. In fact, for Career Connectors, I just booked, we host one large career event a month. And actually it's tomorrow. One of them is tomorrow. I'll tell you about that at the end. But I just booked a recruiter to come in. And so we can take a look behind the scenes, and I'm going to interview her live and talk about exactly what does a recruiter do? Why does it take so much time? What's the ins and outs? And so we're going to do that live on stage in next month, I think is the schedule. But because it's so hard for people to understand often why there are so many steps and what is going on. So these are just an example of what some of the steps are, but there's a lot of steps to recruiting. And so every part of the recruiting process is important, regardless of who you are interviewing with and regardless of how you are interviewing. The location, is it casual, is it a panel, whatever, that you are on your best. That you, regardless of where it is and who you interact with, that you really are on your best. So I don't spend a lot of time on interviewing today. We have a separate full deep dive interview workshop that I'll let you know about. But there are a lot of steps in the recruiting process. And I know it's frustrating. But one of the things you want to do is kind of try to sidestep some of the recruiting process and get connected directly to the source. And that's part of our conversation today. So from a competence standpoint, let's talk about the 3 areas. Competence are the question that the company is asking is, do you have the skills and the qualifications to do this job? Do you have the experience? And do you have the education and training? And there is one main place, really kind of the only place that you can figure out what exactly are they looking for. And that is from the job description. So when you're out there looking at jobs, when someone tells you about a job that's open, the first thing we all should do is we go to the job description. We take a look. What is this job about? Is this a place I would want to work? And so you really dive into the job description. And the way that the company decides, yes, they are, or it looks like they could have the competence to do the job, is based on your resume. That unless you have gotten in through a network, through kind of the sidestep way, which is the ideal way, by the way, applying online and applying on job boards, even though you need to do it, it's not the ideal way. And it takes a lot of time. And so we'll talk about the ideal way, but this is the way most of us do it. And so you have to look at the job description. And with your resume, you must update your resume, tweak your resume for every application that you put in to match the job description. So for example, if this job description says here, if you go down to candidate requirements, take a look at the second bullet. Competence in creating project documentation, tracking projects, and using project management tools such as MS Project, Microsoft Project. If you don't have something in your resume that speaks to that line, then they're probably going to skip you. Even if you maybe one of the most talented experienced project managers there is out there, but you don't have something on your resume about Microsoft Project. You may know it, but you were like, oh, I didn't put that on. I have all these other software systems. No, this job description says Microsoft Project. So you better have on your resume somewhere Microsoft Project. And it's best if it's in a accomplishment statement under one of your work experiences. If you don't talk about on your resume how you created project documentation and how you track projects, if you think that's not important, so you didn't include it, it's very important when you apply to this job. So you need to make sure that information about that line is on your resume, somehow integrated in there. Look at the next one, ability to manage medium-sized teams, contractors, vendors, and suppliers across remote locations. Same thing. Does your resume say anything about your relationships with contractors, vendors, suppliers, that you are able to work in a remote location, that you maybe oversaw multiple a project team that was located in different locations, and that you collaborated with contractors and vendors and you negotiated with suppliers? Like, you must use their language on your resume. Now, this is the thing. People are like, what? How do I update my resume every time? Every time. Yes, you should. Every time. And here's the thing, you guys. You don't need to go out to Indeed.com and apply to 100 jobs a day. Because if that's how you're handling your job search right now, you're probably epically failing. That's just the reality. The more jobs we apply to, the more frustrated we get, the less we modify our resume, and the less we target. So instead, you're going to really apply to the jobs that you want, that are a fit, and that you're a good match for, 80% or so match for. Because those jobs, you're going to modify your resume. You're going to spend the time to kind of tweak your resume. And when I say modify your resume, I'm not talking about going out and hiring a resume writer to completely overhaul your resume every time. That is not what I'm talking about. If you want to do that in one time and have them do a really, really amazing resume for you, awesome, do that. And then use that baseline resume and tweak it for every job you apply for. Karen has a question. What if you did create those kind of documents, but use a program other than Microsoft Project? Karen, you could put that on your resume, but if you know Microsoft Project, then you need to include Microsoft Project somewhere on your resume. It can even be one of your skills. That's fine. I would say that you did create documentation, and you could say the system, that can be an accomplishment. But somewhere on your resume, it needs to probably say, or it needs to say Microsoft Project, so that it has a keyword match to the job. All right, so every resume needs to be tweaked for a match for the company, so that they can see that you are competent. So they can see that you have the capabilities, the technical capabilities. If there's leadership skills that are required, that you have the leadership skills, and that you're a match for their job requirements. When we say, if you've heard anyone say they need to have a keyword match, that keywords are really important, this is why. Recruiters get hundreds of resumes and applications. And one of the ways that they can streamline their processes is they use software, applicant tracking software. That's what you apply through. And that will show them, here are the top resumes that match for this job. And the only way the system can read if you're a match for the job is through these keyword searches. Now, it's even gotten easier with AI for you. And we're going to talk about that strategy and how you can use AI to update your resume and update or and match for the job description. So skills is one area that they're looking at. The other area is experience. Now, this might seem like a no-brainer. Of course, you want experience on your resume. So you want to, on your resume, have the most current experience at the top, and then you can have the other jobs below. And you only want to go back about 15 years max. Some say 10 years, but 10 to 15 years max on your work experience. This can include your full-time jobs, of course, but it also can include your part-time jobs, your gig jobs, your contractor positions, any of those positions, especially if they relate to the job that you're applying for. So let's say you have a full-time job, but you also kind of contract sometimes. And let's say you have a full-time job. I have a friend that was full-time working for, she was in a government agency. I can't remember what exactly she did, but she also had this side gig of graphic design. And so she did this for people just one-off here and there. It wasn't her full-time thing, but she was good at it. She liked it. So there was an opening within a government agency for a graphic designer. Now, she had government experience and she had her side gig experience. She made sure that side gig job, her contracting position, was on her resume so that when she applied, it showed that she had the experience. So that side work or that consulting or contracting or extra work that you pick up absolutely matters. I interview a lot of people. So I run Career Connectors as a nonprofit, and I also have a consulting business. And in my consulting business, I do a lot of recruiting and hiring for large churches. Now, in ministry, a lot of people will have volunteer experience. And if they have volunteer experience, they need to have it on their resume, because then it shows us that they have ministry experience, even if it isn't a full-time position. But also, they may have contracted with a church, which happens a lot. So same idea. If you have volunteer experience, contracting experience, part-time experience, all of that fits under work experience. It doesn't have to be paid to be counted. We have somebody on our team right now as a volunteer, and she has helped us put together this whole coaching program. She's phenomenal. And she put together, we did all these videos. We're launching it tomorrow at our event. I'm so excited. It's like 8 years in the making. And we're launching this. And she put together the whole database back in for us and structured it. Well, she is she does curriculum development, online training design. And when she came to me and said, hey, do you have any needs for somebody who does this? I'd love to volunteer my time. Absolutely. I had a project for her right away. So she did this whole thing for us. And this is just recently. And then as she was looking for a job, she did this. And as she was looking for a job, she found an employer that she really liked. That employer called me and asked for a reference. She put me down as a reference, called me and said, what do you think of her? I gave her the most glowing, reference. I mean, she's phenomenal, and we would not have been able to do this without her. That is the reality. And she got an offer a couple of days later and she calls it her dream job. She's so grateful. And so by her volunteering her time for a couple weeks, she made a huge impact on a nonprofit, and it got her dream job. I mean, that wasn't the only reason she got the dream job, but it was part of the process. So if you have volunteer experience that matters, get that on your resume. It's important. And then if you've done any kind of internships, apprenticeships, anything like that, that also matters. And so all of that can be incorporated in your resume. Now, not all of it has to be incorporated every time. Again, it depends on the job description, right? It depends on what is the company looking for. And if you managed a project with contractors or vendors, but it was a volunteer project, that counts. That should go on your resume for this particular job. So again, it depends on what the job is asking for. But the way that they can evaluate if you are a match for the company on the front end, the competence piece is through your resume. That is the way that they have the ability to understand you. And of course, they can jump out and look at your LinkedIn profile also. But the resume is the main thing they're looking at first. And also, people are recruiting through LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is essential as well from that perspective. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Then the last piece is education. Do you have the education that they're looking for? Whether it is actual schooling, a degree or two or more, do you have certifications or do you have some training? And so, Karen, I'm waiting to answer that question because it fits here. So, if you did not use Microsoft Project, you just haven't used it before, what I would do if I were you, because you have project experience, project management software, then I would go out to Microsoft. I don't know the URL. You can go to Coursera, which does a whole bunch of training and courses. You could also just go to Microsoft Office and take a look at Microsoft Project. You can YouTube videos. If you have experience in project management tools, but you just haven't used Microsoft Project before, I would encourage you to go out, take a look at Microsoft Project, see what it's about, and if you could use it, if it makes sense. Usually if you know one software in that field, same with everything else, with other fields as well. If you know a software in one field, you can usually pick it up really quickly, and then you know what you're doing. What they want to know is, do you know how to do this? Or are we going to have to spend time training you on this particular software? So that's what I would do. My answer for you is it depends. Should I apply? She asked. It depends. Is this a company you really want to work for? Is this a job that is a perfect match for you, or 80% or more match for you? And does it have all the things you want? Maybe your values include flexibility, whatever your values are. Does it line up with this company? And if so, then my answer to you is it would be worth it to go out and take an hour virtual training to see if Microsoft Project is something you do, test it out, try it out. And then yes, you could put it on your resume if on a skill that you understand it and know how to use it. Then that would be worth it. If this is like a company that you're like, I don't know if I really want to work here, I'm not really sure, then don't put it on there. Don't spend the time doing that. And you can apply, but you just wouldn't have that piece on there. And maybe they would be willing. So you have to evaluate for yourself how important a job is that you want. You all should be applying for jobs that you want, not random 100 jobs on Indeed in one day. That is not a strategy. That is a hope and a dream. That's maybe one of them will land. Maybe one of them will stick. I'm just going to throw all this at the wall and maybe one of them will stick. Do you guys ever do that with spaghetti? Like when we're boiling spaghetti to see if it's ready, we throw it on the wall. And if it sticks, then it's ready. We literally do that in our family. And the kids love it. They've loved it their whole lives. And so that's kind of like what we do, right? We're just like, let me apply to everything. We'll just throw it against the wall and maybe one of them will call me back. That is not a strategy. That is not a strategy. A strategy, a focus is what you want to be doing. So that is why I'm saying you really have to evaluate each job as you apply for them. The interesting thing around degrees is if you do not have a degree, understand that companies are reducing, in many cases, the requirement for degrees. And they're getting smarter about what kind of job requires a degree and what does not. So if it says a degree on there, but you feel like you have everything else, all the training, maybe you have a certification, then you could apply for it. So evaluate the job description at about 80%. And if you feel like you're an 80% match or better, then go for it. Go for it. If you feel like you need some training or you do have some training under your belt that is a match for that job, make sure that training is on there. There's so many options for training now that are free, or you just do a monthly subscription and you can go to a ton of classes. Check out Coursera is a great, I'll put that in the chat. It's called Coursera, and that is a great tool to use online, tons of different training options. So those are some of the things they're looking at from a standpoint of competence. So what I want you to do right now, I didn't set you guys up for this, but I would love it if you all pulled out a piece of paper and a pen. And here's why I'm saying that. Let's play a little game real quick. Open up your chat box. And I want you all to take a guess. Maybe some of you know this already. If you're in a training like this today and you're listening and you're involved, you're listening, you're like, okay, this is good information, but you're not taking notes, but you're listening. What percentage do you think people on average retain of information that they listen to? Not write down, they don't write it down, they're listening to it. So what's the percentage? Okay, good. I see 15%, 10, 30. Yep. Good job, you guys. Exactly. It's right around 15 to 20%. 15 to 20% that we remember. So of all the stuff that I say today, if you don't write anything down, you might remember one or two nuggets. Okay. Now, let's say you're listening, but you're also taking notes on your computer or your phone and you're typing it out. What do you think is the percentage of information people retain when they're putting it on their computer, typing it out, typing it on their phone? So they're hearing it, but they're also typing it out on their phone or on their computer. What do you think that percentage is? I see 40%, 60, 45. 35, good. Yeah, that's running around 35, 40%. 35, 40%. Now, let's throw it back old school. What is the percentage on average do you think if when we're listening to something, we actually write down information on a piece of paper, old school, with a pen and a piece of paper? What do you think what percentage on average do we retain by writing things down? Yeah, you guys are with this. You're right on it. It's right around 70, between 70 and 80% is what the numbers tell us. So you go from about 15, 20% to almost 80% just by writing things down. So utilize your time wisely today. And when you hear something, you're like, oh, I got to remember that, or that's important, or I need to update my this, or write it down. So all of y'all go old school with me for a minute. Go find a piece of paper, go find a notebook, go get, a back of a napkin. I don't care. Go get something and then go get a pen or a pencil, because I'm going to have you write something down right now. All right. All right. Now we all got some paper and pencils, right? Ready to go? Okay, so what I want you to think about is, based on the information we just talked about, the competence, the skills, experience, training, the competence. What do you think what step forward can you take that will fill maybe an issue you're having? Is there a piece of your skills or your experience or your training that you feel like you don't have? That when you're reading these job descriptions, you're like, oh, I haven't really done this, but they're asking for it. They're saying I need to have some experience in AI, and I don't even know what that means. They say I need to have Microsoft Project, and I don't have that. I keep seeing that again and again. Write down something that you can do in the next week. So we're on what day? Wednesday. By next Wednesday, I'll even give you till next Friday. By next Friday, what is one thing you can do to better position yourself for the jobs that you're looking for? So maybe you need to go do a speaking engagement. Maybe you need to go talk about your industry, or you need to get comfortable presenting. Maybe you need to actually do some social media. Is the job you're looking for, are they asking you to understand social media? Do you need to really, really think through all of your experiences? Maybe you're not giving yourself enough credit and you haven't thought through your volunteer experience. Maybe you haven't thought through, oh, that little side thing I do for fun, that side gig. Maybe you haven't thought about that. Write those down. Maybe you do need to go take some training. Write one thing down that you need to do. Okay, Cody, good. HRIS, that's great. You need to become familiar with that. Salesforce, good. And I was going to say, and they're already doing it. Write that in the chat. What is one thing you need to do within the next week or so to start to get familiar or get confident or get educated or get some experience in something that you feel like you might have a gap a little bit? And good. What else? Oh, communication skills. Great. Coursera, again, has a ton of communication skills trainings out there. There are a lot of different training tools online that have some stuff with communication skills. So you're changing your fields. Haley is changing. I have the experience, but I'm changing fields and I'm afraid they won't take my experience seriously. So Haley, you got to get super focused on how you can transition the skills you've had over here to over here. So a lot of times that's wordsmithing, that's changing some things around in the way you say it, because if it depends on what industries it is. But I can answer some Q&A at the end, but also in our event tomorrow, we're going to have coaches, career coaches, resume writers, LinkedIn coaches available for you to talk to in one-on-one and small groups, and they can give you some ideas as well. Good, David. Bookkeeping, AI, Julie. Julie, I'm going to give you guys a tool that you can use to start utilizing AI a lot in your job search, and that's going to be emailed out to you later. Okay, so that you guys are getting it. This is what I'm talking about. You get really focused on some things that I can do that I'm missing. And I'm telling you, when you start to do this kind of stuff, your confidence builds, you become focused, and your job search will change. It will change. It will not feel like you're throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing if it sticks. All right, so now we're going to jump over to the character side. So I want you to kind of think through character. Okay, what does it mean when I say you need to have the character traits? You need to have the right behavior style for a company. So if you were to think through, like, okay, what kind of company? What is my ideal type of company? And you can just park this in your brain. Is it maybe a small growing business or nonprofit? Or is it a large mega corporation? Is it a medium-sized business that you have some flexibility? Like, is it a company that cares about maybe service? But like, you want to start thinking, what kind of company do I want to work for? Because it matters as you become focused. Then you're going to really target the companies you want to work for. And so I'm going to talk through how you know some of your behavior traits that come out in the job search and how you match those to companies and how you can look through website, social media, job boards, and get some hints on the kind of companies that are a match for you. So first of all, think about behavior traits. Here's just some examples. If you think about some of the most important values or behavior traits that a company has, here are some examples. What come to mind for you? What are some of the things that come to mind for you? Do you like to work for like an agency that is, steady plodding, loyal, kind of, you can count on them, right? Or do you want, and that maybe is a large resourceful organization. They have a lot of resources. Or do you want to work for a company that is fast moving, maybe doesn't have all the resources, but they're creative and exciting? Do you want to work for a company that cares a lot about other people in different ways? Maybe they have a target and a care for veterans, and that's really important to you. So I want you to be thinking about what kinds of behavior traits are important to me. And you might be like, I don't care, I just want a job. But I am telling you, the better match you can find, the better you know yourself, the better match you can find for a company, you're going to walk into an interview and nail it. You're going to connect. And that is why it is important for you to think through this stuff instead of just taking the next job that comes along. I really want you to think through your behavior traits. Now, I'm giving you a tool here at no cost. It's called a DISC assessment. You may have another assessment that you've done. In fact, open up your chat, drop in the chat. Are there any other behavior tools, personality assessments, hiring assessments, anything you've taken that you have access, maybe you've done in the past? Write that in the chat. It could be like Myers-Briggs, Predictive Index, the DISC. You've researched ONET. Any assessments that you've done, go ahead and drop that in the chat. Because what you can do is you can go pull those out and refresh yourself on some of your really strong behavior strengths. What are you really good at? For example, this person on this assessment has probably really great communication skills. They like change. They're persuasive. Here is on the DISC assessment, here is my favorite part. When you take the DISC, and it will be in your email, you're going to get an email. This will be one of the links, free, no cost. When you take the DISC assessment, there are two sections that I really, really love. One that says my ideal environment, because when you read the ideal environment, that can help you get focused on the type of company you want to work for, the type of job you want to work for. This person says assignments with a high degree of people contacts. So if this is my result, if this is what I get back, then these are the type of jobs I want to focus on. I probably don't want to focus on being maybe an accountant that I'm going to be working on my own, pulling my own reports, and then talking to somebody once a month to report them out. I won't want to be with a team, a group. And even if you're in finance, then maybe it's not an individual accounting job. Maybe you want to be running project teams or doing something differently. But reading this will give you an idea of the type of position, the type of environment that you can focus on. And then I love this page. This is your value to the organization. What are your greatest strengths? What do you bring to a company? Because I want to make sure that you integrate this into your resume, into your LinkedIn profile, into your interviews, your conversations. Like, these are your best strengths. So you want to make sure that when you take this, you take a real good look at these two pages. All right. So that is one of the ways you can start to understand, all right, what are some of my greatest strengths from a character standpoint. And then I want to show you guys all this. So even though I did talk about skills earlier, I plopped this here because this is more on the transferable professional skill site rather than the actual hard skills or the technical skills. So it kind of falls into the behavior side and the character side. These are the top 10 professional skills that have been listed in the last couple of years. Now you can go out and search and Google, and sometimes they'll be a little bit differently, but these are ones we see come up over and over and over again. And communication is at the top, and it has been for a very long time. So somebody on here said that they really want to go focus on, Rhonda, some communication training, which is so great, because with that, if you go out and do some communication training, you can even integrate that into your resume, and they can see that you have a focus and a care about that area. It can be communication training, can be, like written training. It can be speaking, spoken training. Communication is all over the board. But that is and it continues to be one of the highest professional skills that are out there. Another one that's coming that's really, really important, and a lot of people don't realize this, is because of the influx of the way that AI and artificial intelligence is affecting our work, there is a soft skill, a professional skill that is around the ability to analyze information. might say data analysis, information analysis, the ability to understand information and see if it makes sense, because that is what is happening with AI. These AI tools are sending us information, and we have to have the ability to read that information and decide if it makes sense or something needs to change. And so that's why that is a skill that's really growing, the ability to analyze information. And so then here are some of the other ones as well. And then here's just, you guys can see a list of technical skills and an example list of professional skills. And so just take a look at those. I love this one when I did this research, because on the technical skills side, there's a lot more listed there than maybe some of you realized. I hadn't even thought about a whole bunch of these. For example, if on digital marketing tools, maybe you know Google Analytics pretty well. There's also on here CRM, somewhere customer relationship management. So if you've been in a call center or you've answered the phones and you've had to input information in a database or some kind of system, that's probably was a CRM. So you can put that on your resume. You have that experience. And so then on the professional skills side, which is how we do a character match, really look through what are some of the professional skills that I'm really strong at, and maybe the ones that I'm maybe missing a little bit that I need to, you don't have to focus on them, but maybe you need to, freshen them up. Maybe you really need to spend some time thinking about it. Maybe go through some of those online trainings. And again, I'm not here to tell you to focus on the stuff you're not good at. You really want to focus on your strengths, but there's a time and a place to make sure you have enough that you are, for example, if you don't like to present in front of people, you still probably need the ability to be able to do it and to present a presentation to a group of people. It may not, you don't want to be on a stage with 10,000 people, but in a room, a small room in front of a staff, you need to be able to present. So think about what are some of those things that I need to be good at to be able to find the companies that want to hire me. And here are some of the ways you can find out. So the first one here is through their website. And so the website is one of the best places you can go to find information about companies and about the employees that they are looking for and that are a good match. So I'm using Achieve as my example here. Achieve is a medium-sized company. They're located in Arizona. They have a small headquarters in California, but they have most of their presence here in Arizona. And they do a hybrid workforce. And so they were all on site until COVID happened, and now they've restructured their business model where they have a hybrid. And I think they do like 1 week a month. You have to be on site, and then the other 3 weeks are remote. They do something interesting like that. So here's an example. This company, most people would be like, oh, I don't want to work for that kind of company. So this company essentially is a debt collection company. And I think when we all hear that, we just are like, oh, who wants to work for that kind of company? But here's the thing. They've won Best Place to Work in Arizona multiple times as #1, multiple times. They have a really strong culture. And so when I was like, hey, let me find out a little bit more about the type of people they hire. Like, I know this company, I know I've worked with them for many, many years, but I was like, I'm going to check out their website to see what they say. So when they are hiring salespeople, if you look on this slide, it says empathetic problem solvers. Now, when you think about a salesperson, if you are a salesperson, oftentimes they're looking for a closer, someone who will just pick up the phone and call people on and close. And they're direct and they're maybe outgoing and they're really highly relational. That's what many people are in sales. That's not what this company's looking for. They're looking for empathetic problem solvers. So I was having a conversation with their HR VP, and I said, tell me about that. What, salespeople, that's not the typical role for behavior traits for a salesperson. And she said, we look for empathetic problem solvers because the people that we're talking to, that we're helping and serving, are in dramatic debt for the most part, and it is taking over their lives. And so the last thing we want anyone to ever feel like, and the last thing we're trying to do, is close them on a debt consolidation program. That's why so many debt collector organizations have such a bad name. Because in fact, what we want to do is we want to empathize with them, understand, and then try to figure out ways to solve their problem. So that's what our salespeople do. We hire empathetic. In fact, they don't hire typical salespeople. They train them on how to walk alongside people that are struggling. And you know what? A lot of people that are on the phones all day for this company love their jobs because they're helping people solve their problems every single day. But you can find that kind of stuff out on a company's website. And if I'm a salesperson, and if I'm a closer and I'm direct and I like to dial for dollars, but I go to their website and I see this, this would frustrate me as a salesperson. But so I wouldn't even apply. Why would I spend my time networking, applying? Why would I do that when I know that's not the type of company I would want to work for? But if I'm not in sales, but this company sounds interesting, and I go and see that, then I'm going to do some more. I'm going to dive into it. I'm like, wait a minute, I am very empathetic actually, and I love to solve problems. Maybe this is something I would be interested in. I like to talk to people, but I don't want to talk to 500 people a day, maybe 10. And when my call times don't matter as much, like, hey, let's take a look at this. And so you're getting to know the company to see if you have the right traits to match them. So the website is great. There's also usually on the footer, sometimes in the header. In the footer, there's a lot of places that you can dig into to understand the type of company that they are. All right, and then social media. So with social media, you can learn a lot about a company. You can learn, YouTube is great because there's YouTube the shorts or the videos on there. A lot of times it's employees talking about, what they do in their company and maybe how they're serving the community, whole bunch of different things. Instagram, obviously LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a really, really great option when it comes to what is available on their social media. So I encourage you to take a look at their social media, the LinkedIn pages, and follow them. Follow all of them. Engage with these companies. When they're posting, when they're out there, get to know them, because you know what? There are typically people behind the social media accounts. And a lot of times there are career pages specific to these accounts, and those are recruiters right behind those social media accounts. If you are applying for a job at, I'm going to use one I know for sure, Dignity Health, which is a huge healthcare system in Arizona, and then a whole bunch of other states around here, Southwest. The people managing their social media careers pages are their recruiters. And you're actually building a relationship with the recruiters. And that is really an amazing place to find out more about the company. And so that when you apply for a job, you can actually reach out to somebody you have met through their social media accounts. So do that. And then job boards. Of course, job boards, you can use that for some really, really great research. The big ones I've mentioned, like Indeed, Monster, Jobbing, they're really, really big ones. LinkedIn also. Those are really, really, really big job boards. Those are great for research. I personally am not a fan of applying through Indeed or applying on the big job boards. Lots of reasons. One, there's a high likelihood that some of those jobs are not legit jobs, that some of them are filled, that they're not even active jobs. Some of them are, maybe spam accounts. Some of them are just out there to create a pipeline for future hiring, to get information. So I'm not a fan of applying for jobs through them. But what I do recommend is using them to research and then going to the company page and applying that way. Going to LinkedIn and making a connection with someone that works at the company. Going to LinkedIn to see if that job is posted and there's a recruiter attached to it. So you use the job boards for the research side of the job. The job target marketing. So you use the job boards to learn about other companies that are hiring, but then go to their actual website and apply. The exception to that really, I think, is LinkedIn, because on LinkedIn, you can apply and you can kind of see who the recruiter is oftentimes. So I like that. And a lot of recruiters utilize LinkedIn that way. Okay, so now I want you to think about, get that piece of paper out, get that piece of paper out. So for you to have a better understanding of your behavior traits and also some companies that you might be interested in, what's something you need to do? Within the next week, I said till next Friday, so it's like 9 days. Within the next 9 days, write down what is something you can do to understand your behavior traits better, or do some research on some companies that you are interested in. Do you need to take an assessment? Do you need to really think through what are the skills or your top kind of professional soft skills? What kind of values are you looking for with a company? Maybe you need to go out and follow some social media accounts and engage with a company. Maybe you need to go review Glassdoor. Glassdoor is a website that will tell you information about a company from people that have previously or currently worked there. So you can kind of understand some behind the scenes stuff. So write it in the chat. What is one thing you need to do from this perspective within the next week or so to get yourself prepared as a better candidate for the job? Okay. Thanks, Wendy. Yes, Mandy, we are going to send you an email afterwards. As long as you registered or you checked in with that link or QR code, you're going to get an email after this with the link to the recording and a whole bunch of resources, many that I'm mentioning today. Rhonda, I'm not really sure what you're referencing about a hiring event. So if you want to clarify, that's great. Good. Make a list of the companies. Okay, Valerie, I have not even talked about that yet. But what Valerie said, she wants to make a list of companies I want to work for. My encouragement to you guys is between 10 and 20 companies. You need to have written down somewhere 10 to 20 companies that you want to work for. And this is part of that process. This is part of the process. So make sure that you are researching companies, because again, we're focused on a targeted job strategy. If you get your strategy down and you really spend the time to come up with your strategy, your job search is going to go so much faster. You're not going to be throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing if it sticks. You're going to focus. So 10 to 20 companies is what we recommend to have at least 10 to 20 that you're really interested in working in. Great, you guys. Okay, Mandy, we will drop the link again for you. And so Wendy or Sharon, if you could drop the link to make sure anyone that came in late or didn't get it the first time can do that. Thank you, Wendy. Networking, great. We're going to touch on networking a little bit. Karen, great. Take the assessment. The link will be in your email. The list, Liz, yes, networking feels daunting. We're going to talk about it in just a minute. Oh, Socorro, I did not know that Indeed purchased Glassdoor. Interesting. I think I know Glassdoor is still a really good research tool. But again, we're going to go off of those job boards to apply when we're interested in a company. All right. You guys are getting this, so let's now talk about chemistry. So chemistry is really the interview. I'm going to say something right now some of you might not like, and I'm okay with it because my job is not to be liked. My job is to get you the job you want. So you ready for it? Companies hire people they like. Some of you are like, duh, that makes sense. But how often do we hear things like, I'm the perfect fit for this job. Why didn't they hire me? It makes no sense. I could do this job in my sleep. Why didn't I get the job? Guys, we have to, in an interview, make a connection. Make some type of connection so that person interviewing me says, I could work with her. Man, I really liked her. Like, I could see us working together. Oftentimes, we spend more time with the people that we work with than we do our kids, our spouse, our family, our friends. So we want to like the people we work with. So the interview is the place where you get the ability to see if you have a connection, some type of chemistry that this thing can work, that they will like to work with me and that I will like to work with them. So I'm going to give you some tips on how to make that happen. And in the interview workshop that we have, I just taught one last week. I think I have one coming up in 2 weeks. We'll see at the end. I'll tell you where it is, when it is. We're going to deep dive into it and get you prepared for interviews. And you're not going to have to memorize interview questions. You're just going to prepare your answers without even knowing the questions. And so I'm going to touch on it in a minute, but that will get you ready. So, couple things to help you really feel like you can make a connection with an employer. Before you walk in, you must research that employer. So hopefully, if they're on one of your 10 to 20, your list, you've already researched them. You already know. So think about this. You get a call from an unknown number. And how do we all pick up the phone when it's an unknown number? Well, I don't know. Some of us just go, no, and send them to voicemail, right? That's what a lot of us do. I have now a spam filter on my phone, so it'll say potential spam, and that for sure is going in. But it's an unknown number, and you're like, oh, I'm submitting my applications. I better answer the phone. And so you're like, hi, this is Jessica. Can I help you? And it's fine. You answer fine. But what if one of the companies that I am really interested in working for, in fact, let me ask you guys, could you write down in the chat right now, list a company you would love to work for? That you're like, oh, I already know that this is a company I would love to work for. I've applied for jobs there, or I'm really interested in working for them. Somebody give me an example of a company that you're interested in working for. Oh, Liz, Headspace. Headspace. So my husband's a therapist. I mentioned that, I think already. And I am not a person that likes to meditate or anything like that. I just don't settle down well that way. But I found Pilates a year and a half ago, and I'm addicted. It is my time to just disconnect. Love, love, love it. But Headspace has an app, of course, but they also, if you are familiar with Headspace, you can get it on Netflix. There is a Headspace, or there used to be, I don't know if it's still out there, but there are videos for Headspace, and that kind of gives you a process to kind of reduce all the kind of crazy that goes on in our heads sometimes. And so I was telling my husband I was having trouble sleeping, and he's like, Jess, you need to listen to Headspace. You need to watch the video. I'm like, no, that's so dumb. I don't like to do that. It makes me more like, I'm not a person. So anyway, one night we're sitting there talking, and I'm like, fine, I'll just try Headspace. And so we put it on TV, and I'm not kidding you, I was asleep in 2 minutes. And so the next day, Mark's like, so how'd you like Headspace? And I'm like, all right, fine. It's fine. He was right. So I tell you that story because a company like Headspace, Liz, you get the phone call and it says somehow Headspace is identified. You see it's coming from Headspace. How excited are you that Headspace is calling you? You applied for a job and Headspace is on your phone. And you're like, oh my gosh. And you're like, hi, this is Liz. How can I help you? You're so excited because you saw it was Headspace. And you don't have to research them. You know who they are. Like, you watch the video, you have a story, you could connect with them like this. That's what I'm talking about, that connection. So how exciting, Liz, would you be if Headspace called you? I bet if Headspace called you right now, I bet you would step out of this webinar and you would go take that call, right? Like, same thing, you know, Karen, Society of St. Vincent de Paul, you were there for now, and then they had it, yeah, but you loved working there. U of A, Laura, if they called you right now, you'd like, yes, I'm picking up that phone. Julie, Humane Society. Joe, Early Warning. Oh, Zell, they're the same now. Didn't know that. Colorado State for Cody. You guys, this is what I'm talking about. That list of 10 to 20, that helps you target. So this is one of the first steps. So when you are answering the phone and you see it's from one of these companies that you have put down on your list that you have dreamed about working at, the connection is instant because you're excited they're calling you. It's not like you're thinking it's spam and you're like, hi, there's Jessica. And they have to tell you who it is. They have to tell you about the company. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll interview. But if Headspace calls, I am all about it. Like, I could talk to that lady for an hour right there, just talking about their company. That's how excited I want you to be when you get an interview. So 10 to 20 companies, get them written down, and then make sure you know the resume that you used to apply for that job. So Liz is like, Headspace, when I applied for the job, or the 3 jobs I applied for at Headspace, I saved each resume that I used to apply to each job so that when I get the call from that company, I can pull up that resume. And hopefully you also save the job description, because sometimes by the time you get the interview, the job description is no longer out there. So you save your resume and you save the job description that you used to apply. And so that when they call you, you have that and you can review that. Because again, there are tweaks for every job you apply for, and you want to make sure you're using the resume. Even though it's not a huge difference, it does make a difference. So make sure you know your resume, and then before you go in, you're also going to want to prepare your notes and review them. You're going to want to, do that research. You're going to want to make sure you know what examples you're going to use going in. So when I say examples, you're going to want to think through a whole bunch of examples that you can use in the interview, and that you're going to set up ahead of time. You're going to think through different options, stories, accomplishments that you've had that you're going to be able to use in the interview. And that is a deep dive on the interview. So we don't have time to do that today, but if you attend the interview workshop, we'll walk through the deep dive and preparing those answers. You'll walk out of that workshop with answers prepared for the interview. And so you really want to think through your accomplishments and what kind of examples you can use in your interview questions. So that's all before. You also want to bring copies of your resume in case somebody needs them, if it's in person. And you want to bring a notepad. You can take notes during interviews, you guys. If you're not taking notes during interviews, I encourage you to do that. When they're asking a question, one of my favorite things to do is actually write down some of the question so that once I start telling my answer, I can look down and make sure I actually answer the question they asked me. Because sometimes I feel like we veer off and we don't close it. We don't come back and answer what they are asking. So during the interview, really important is that first impression. Arriving a few minutes early, and then making sure you're engaging with everybody that is part of the process. Whether it's the receptionist checking you in, it's somebody holding the door for you, it's somebody walking you to the room, anybody, you are engaging with everybody. And we all can smile. Everybody can smile and say hi. And then when you are answering questions, you're answering them based on facts, not theories. So if you've zoned out at all, come back to me right now. When you are answering interview questions, you are answering them based on facts, not theories. And what I mean by that is when they ask you a question about, tell me about a time I'll go back to that project. You managed a project with software. You actually give them an example of when you did that. Instead of saying, oh, here's how I would do that. I would probably pull a tool down. I maybe use Microsoft Project. I'd engage with all of the teams. I'd call the leads, and then we put a plan together. You might think that's a really good answer, but it's a terrible answer because that's just theory. That's just like maybe how I would do this. Instead, you go to facts and you say, when they ask you, tell us about, how you would manage a project or how you have managed a project, doesn't matter the question. It can be how you would or how you did manage a project. Your answer is on facts and an example. So when I was managing this project, let's use an implementation of a software. When I managed this project for the software implementation and HRIS implementation for our company, I had to work with the HR business partners at 3 different locations, and they were in, California, they were in Nebraska, and they were on the East Coast out in Charleston, South Carolina. We had weekly meetings. We put together a project plan using Microsoft Project or something else. And we had 6 weeks to do it, and we had to hit milestones along the way. And we were able to implement it throughout our whole company and test it by the due date. And we actually were under budget by about $25,000. That is an example, not a theory. So when you give facts and examples of the work you've done, the company, the interviewer can say, I could see that person doing what they did over here at our company. But when you give a theory, they're like, yeah, that might work. I don't know. It's hard to make the connection. So give facts, give examples, because what you've done in the past is an indicator of what you can do in the future. So if you give facts and examples, they can say, oh, they've done that in the past. That's an indicator they can do something very similar with us. So think about always using facts and examples and not theories. And I'm going to dive into it a little bit more in just a minute. And then after the interview, you want to send a follow-up. It can be an email. It can be a connection on LinkedIn with a note. And I do encourage you, before and after the interview, whenever you get the name of the person, connect with them on LinkedIn. See if you can find them on LinkedIn and connect with them. And then put a note like, can't wait for our interview on Tuesday. You guys, I interview thousands of people a year. No joke, thousands. The percentage of people that connect with me on LinkedIn because of an interview is maybe 1%. I'm not even kidding you. It is rare. More often than not, I am connecting with them on LinkedIn because I'm just doing some research and validating the information they've told me. If you connect with them on LinkedIn and include a note, like, I'm so excited to interview you for you. I have wanted to work for Headspace for 2 years, and I finally am having the opportunity to talk to somebody about it, and I'm so excited. Put a little note in there. All right. LinkedIn, in my opinion, LinkedIn is the best option. Even, Karen, better than sending a letter, a note. That's nice to do. You can do that if you want to, but so many people are remote. Their hours are flexible. They probably don't get their mail all the time, and the delay is significant. But LinkedIn is immediate. Not only that, they can click, when they accept your connection request, they can be reminded of your whole profile and all of your experiences again. So for some reason you didn't make a good enough connection with them, they're like, oh, that's right, that's who this person is. So LinkedIn is the way that I would encourage all of you to connect. So from a first impression standpoint, you want to make sure you do a handshake. You look them in the eyes and you smile. That seems so simple, but again, if we go back to what I said at the very beginning of talking about the connection piece, is the chemistry piece is people want to work with people they like. Smiling shows, hey, I like you, you like me, I'm happy, I'm not a grumpy face all the time. Like, you can connect with them, you can smile. But another way that you can actually make a quick connection is through this last tip, which I call mirroring their initial response. And what I mean by that is some people, when they are interviewing candidates, they want to make an initial connection. Hey, how was your drive here? Tell me a little bit about what you do. What are some of your hobbies? That kind of stuff. And they want to have a conversation, a quick conversation before the interview starts. These are people usually that are pretty good at small talk. And so they want to have this little conversation before the meeting, or maybe it's from the time you're walking from wherever you checked in back to the conference room. And they're having this conversation. Have the conversation. Engage with them. Ask questions back. Kind of do the how's the weather? All the small talk that some of it, I despise small talk. It's really hard for me. I have a really hard time networking and doing small talk. But I'm really good at building a relationship and being curious about people. And so if you really struggle with the small talk, the networking, I'm going to encourage you to switch your brain over to get curious about people and build a relationship. So within this mirror, this initial response, if they're asking you, how was your drive over? You can be like, my drive was great. How long does it take you to get to work? Or do you work remote sometimes? Or if they're asking you about, rant hobbies, whatever, like, oh, this is what I do. What do you like to do? Like, I have 3 kids and they're older now. And so I have a lot more free time. So we travel. What about you? Do you guys like to travel? Like, have that conversation, but don't think about it as small talk. Think about it as, how can I get to know this person a little bit better? What are some questions I can ask them? So that's the mirroring. And on the flip side of small talk are the people that just want to get to it. Let's jump into the interview. So when I'm interviewing people, I book them back to back to back to back. It's the only way I can manage all my time. So I have dedicated interview days twice a week, and I book candidates every half hour. Every half hour. It's how I manage my time. So when I am interviewing, and the script is almost always the same. Basically, hey, thanks for coming to the interview today. I appreciate your time. And they'll say, oh, I'm so happy to be here, but something like that. And I'll go, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the job, and then we're going to get into some interview questions. I'm just going to get some background information from you today, and then I'll get you moving along in the process. Literally what I say to almost every candidate. And so I go in, I tell them a little bit about the job, and then I say, all right, tell me about, and I ask the first interview question. I don't do the small talk. My job and what I'm doing for my clients is to vet these people to make sure they have the competence, they actually do have the skills, and that they could potentially be a fit from a character standpoint. I can't measure chemistry because chemistry is between the hiring manager and the candidate. But I can understand if they have the competence and if they have the behavior traits we're looking for. And so I jump right into it. I have 30 minutes with that candidate because then I got to go on to my next one. And I am taking notes. So if your interviewer jumps into it, don't get offended. Don't think it was a bad interview. Answer their questions. And then you can ask questions along the way if you want. If they ask you about leadership, for example, tell me about a time where you had to lead a team, and you give the example of leading a team and and then at the end you can say, do you guys do everything through teams here, or what kind of leader do I have? You can engage in a conversation in an interview. It doesn't just have to be questions directed at you the whole time. And that is how you can build some of the rapport. But that initial piece, if they are doing small talk, you do small talk and you engage. If they jump right into the interview, do not be offended and just go for it. All right. Okay. So interview questions. Okay. Well, I'm going to jump over to my questions here. I answered that one. Let's see. Okay. Great question, Liz. Is it weird to apply to multiple jobs at the same companies? I'm going to kind of, Laura, I don't know if you're a recruiter or in HR or workforce, but this is exactly right, in my opinion as well. Don't apply for everything. Apply for the ones that you are a fit for. There might be a director level job in HR that you are absolutely a good fit for. And at the same time, there might be a program manager that you're a good fit for. And that's totally okay. But make sure your resume speaks to that experience. Don't just apply for every job. I have people that will apply for executive roles and facilities team. Like, apply for the one, I'm offended that you applied for my facilities job and wasted my time looking at your resume and considering you. I'm offended because now I have to tell you 8 times no, because you don't know who you are. But you can apply for multiple jobs as long as you are a fit. Okay, let's see. What, Laura, workforce development manager. Good job. Thanks, Laura. And then Haley, what if it's a board interviewing you? Yes, it's intimidating. And I'm going to address that in just a minute around different types of interviews. And so here are example interview questions. You're always going to get, tell me a little bit about yourself. You're always going to get that question. You're always going to get questions around your strengths and your weaknesses. You're always going to get the question, why do you want this job, or why are you interested? So those questions, and then the why should we hire you? So why are you interested and why should we hire you? Those 4 topic areas, tell me about yourself, strengths and weaknesses, why are you interested in this position, and why should we hire you? All good questions you're going to get. And I want to address real quickly each of them. I can't deep dive into them, but I can't give you kind of exactly how to answer those, but I would like to spend just a second here. So the tell me about yourself is very high level overview of your experience. Okay, that's basically what it is. And you can also throw something in about the company. Just to go back to, let's say, I think was it Scott that was Colorado State? Cody, Colorado State University. So maybe when Cody is telling about him telling the people he's interviewing with about himself, either he went to Colorado State or there's a reason he probably wants to work at Colorado State. So let's say Cody's giving some experience, and he says, I went to this university, but we played them in football, or and I've always wanted to live in Colorado, and I just love what Colorado State is doing. Like, you can throw that in there. Okay, that can be the tell me about yourself. The strengths and weaknesses, here's what they're doing here. They're trying to understand if you know yourself. If you actually know what your strengths and weaknesses are. So on that DISC assessment link that I'm going to give you guys, that you're going to get after this workshop, you're going to get in the assessment a list of your strengths and also areas of improvement opportunity, right? So once you understand those, then practice how you would address a question around a strength or weakness. What is your greatest strength? Don't just say something like communication. Instead, give an example of how you're a great communicator. For example, let's say, you know what, maybe you're applying for a sales job, and negotiation is one of your really good strengths. And they say, hey, tell me about one of your strengths. What is your greatest strength? And you're like, well, one of my really strong strengths is negotiation. And give an example. For example, I have negotiated, multiple deals at this level, and it was a win-win. It solved their problem, and it also made us a 35% revenue, whatever you don't just state what the strength is, you give an example. Because again, to go back to facts, when you give them an example, they can see your example is an indicator to them of what you can do for them. So use an example. Don't just use theories. Say, hey, a strength, I'm pretty good at negotiating. That does nothing, and it doesn't make the connection. Weakness, same thing. Weakness, they want to know, one, do you know yourself? And two, what do you do about it? So, for example, one of my weaknesses is details. Okay, I'm really good administratively, and I can put together the best spreadsheet and the best process. But when it comes to the details of the information within the cells of a spreadsheet, that's where I mess up because I'm going too fast. Or when I'm writing newsletters, that's where my details aren't. So what I do is with important documents, I have other people proof them. I throw it into AI and have them format it. Like, you talk to them about what you do to surround yourself to make sure whatever weakness you have isn't actually in the long run hurting you or hurting the company. Here's one of the biggest issues on a resume. When somebody puts something on their resume as they are detail oriented and they misspell detail. Happens all the time. Or they put detail oriented, or a strength is detail orientation, and then they have spelling errors throughout their resume. Like, instead of manager, they say manger. So you have to, whatever you say your strength is, make sure it actually is your strength. A weakness isn't bad. It's just to see how, everyone has them. It's to see how you respond. David, it's actually a really good question from an EQ standpoint, emotional quotient. Do you know yourself? We all have weaknesses. I send the DISC assessment out to candidates when we interview, or when we're going to interview them very often. And most people are like, thanks for sending that. Wow, what a great assessment. Da, 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 da. But sometimes people will be like, well, I just want to talk about the DISC because I did not agree with this, 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 and this. And you know what the things they didn't agree with? Always, every single time, are anything that could be portrayed negative. So kind of the weaknesses area. Here's the thing. Everyone knows that everybody has weaknesses, but the way we respond is what they're looking for, actually. Okay, because they wouldn't have you in the interview if you didn't have the competence. You already checked those boxes. So they're validating that you're competent, but they're also trying to see if you know yourself. Why are you interested in this position? This, again, should be one of those, especially if it's a company that's on your list. You should be able to say that right away. You should know why you want to work there. If it's a new company and you're interviewing, you've never heard of them, you don't know much about them, go on to all the tools I gave you, the website, social media, Glassdoor, and learn as much as you can before you go into that interview, because that should just flow. And then why we hire you is also kind of like to see if you want to work there, and they also want to see if you can connect the job responsibilities with your strengths. This is why, because I see that this job is this and I can make an impact here. So when we're thinking like a hiring manager instead of ourselves, we're thinking about the hiring manager. The hiring manager is talking to you because you need to solve their problem, whatever their problem is. They need more staff to fill this role. That's what they want to know. Are you going to solve my problem, or am I going to hire you and you're going to be a bigger problem? How are you going to solve their problem? So those are some of the example interview questions. But again, make sure you are always answering your interview questions with a fact and example of what you've done. Here are some questions that you can ask. So maybe you want to screenshot this, or it'll also obviously be on the webinar. But questions to ask. If you feel like you didn't get to ask questions that during the interview, you do want to at least ask one or two to show that you are interested. And so these can be ones that you can use. Why do you like working here? Is this position available because it's a new position, or it's a replacement for somebody that recently left? What are you looking for? I love when people ask this question, or a version of this question. So when I'm interviewing somebody and they'll say, hey, is there anything you saw that maybe didn't make me exactly the right fit? Or what are the top things the hiring manager is looking for? I love this because it gives me an opportunity to prep them for their next interview. And I would say to them, and it just happened yesterday, I said to this candidate, you know what? You have a gap in this area. And so I'm going to go ahead and send you on to the hiring manager. But what I would do in the meantime is go out and do a ton of research on this thing that I had for him. And he goes, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And so that, by me doing that, that gives him time to prepare for his interview. Because here's the thing, recruiters are not your enemy. They're not. Recruiters, it is a great day when you get a candidate that's a match for the job and they could be a good fit for the role. They are your biggest advocates. So when you're interviewing with a recruiter, you can ask things like this. What are they really looking for? Is there anything I don't quite have? Those are all great questions. Okay, and then from a references standpoint, I want to make sure that you guys have this part down. All right, so references, you want to prepare these ahead of time. You put this on your list, write this down. If you don't have your references ready to go, I want you to write this down. So you should have between 6 to 8 references ready to go. For any employer that asks you, you want to have 2 references of people that have been your manager or your leader. If you maybe haven't worked in a long time, have you volunteered? And is there somebody you reported to essentially that, led in that area? I get asked all the time to be a reference because our volunteers are essentially reporting to me. And so I am happy to provide references. So 2 of your leaders or managers, 2 people that you worked, like our colleagues that you worked next to or alongside with, or were on projects with, or were maybe a volunteer with. If you've managed people, 2 people that you have managed. So that's called a subordinate, somebody who worked for you. And then 2 personal. So 6 to 8, depending on if you've managed people or not, 6 to 8 people. Personal ones, they can be really good friends. They can be somebody you volunteered with, maybe someone that knows you through your hobbies or your church or whatever, 2 personal. And what you're going to do is you're going to prep this list and you're going to go out and ask each of these. You're going to say, hey, I'd like to put you on my list of references. Is that okay? I don't have the employer information yet, but when I do get asked for my references, I will let you know. But I would like to have you ready to go. Is that okay? So you ask that question and you get them down on a document, something. You get all their information. Basically, they're going to want to know their name, if they're currently active in a company, and their title, their phone number, and email. That's it. Get that information. And then when a company asks you for references, then you take a look at your list of references and you're like, which people would be the best references to give based on that job in the interviews that I've been through? Who would make the best connection? Who would basically advocate for me the best? So if they ask for a leader, somebody you worked for, and or someone that's worked for you, and then a personal reference, that's 3. Pick 3, but 3 that are the best fit for that job. So then you send them right over, and then you send a note or a text or an email or whatever to the 3 people that you gave, and you said, hey, I just gave your name to this company I'm interviewing for. Here's the job description. Here's my resume if you want it. So, and someone may be calling you for from this company. And here's a big tip I tell people. Here is something I would love for you to talk about. Tell them something. Say, remember when we worked on that project and I was leading, but then, or you were leading and then I had to step in because you were away, and whatever it is. Tell them what you would like for them to talk about, and they'll make sure they get that piece in. It's a really great way to have people advocate for you. Okay, let's see. I'm reading just some of the notes here. Okay, so oftentimes, David has a question here about, or a comment, companies I have worked for do not provide references due to lawsuits. Absolutely, that is typical. But companies, when they ask for references, you can go out and ask people. Maybe it's not that company, but what if that person doesn't work there anymore? So you do want to get some references. You want to find some people somehow that will be your references, because companies will require it. Now, what the other thing is, the company may call your previous employer, and in that case, legally, there's only a couple questions they can ask. But these references, the one you give them, it's kind of open. They can have a conversation with them. And so these are kind of the approved references. Recommendation letters are fine. I'm kind of like, they could be helpful maybe. Make sure those people actually give you a testimonial on LinkedIn, because those are often looked at even more than reference letters or letters of recommendation. Karen, if you can get phone numbers, that's the best, because so many people text nowadays, and they'll text. If it's an official process, sometimes they will send an email and ask them to fill out a form or something. They won't even have a conversation. But if you can get emails, and most people will, phone numbers, most people will provide you a phone number if you're asking them to be a reference for you. Okay, so you guys, that is how you become a culture match. You are a candidate that matches from a competence level. So you have the skills, the education, and the abilities to do the job. You have a character match, kind of the way you work and the things you care about and your, what you bring to the table is a match for what the company cares about and what, their traits, their behavior. So you want that to be somewhat of a match. Doesn't have to be exact, but somewhat of a match. And then the chemistry is the third piece, is the interview. Do we like you, and do you like us? And can we get along and work well together? So those three things those three components are how you become the culture match, how you become the candidate that they're talking about, that they want to hire. So that is how you think through, that's the process of how you think like a hiring manager. Now let's jump into some of the tools that you're going to use for your job search. The first one here is, I kind of been addressing some of it as we go along today, but how can I become focused on what career, what job I want? Are any of you in the place where, actually, I saw at least one of you mention this, right? Put a yes in the comments on the chat. If you want to do something different than you've done in the past, either changing industries, changing the type of work you do, doing something differently than what you've done in the past. Put a yes if I have anyone on the line. Okay, we have a couple people. So you want to, okay, Laura. Oh, good. Very good insight, Laura. So not necessarily want to do something different, but she needs to probably adjust some things because of the climate in the employment climate right now. That is really wise. Because oftentimes when we're applying for jobs, we're applying for what we're experienced at. And it might not necessarily be an in-demand skill set any longer. We are seeing that happen with a lot of IT people, unfortunately. And so for technology people that either have older skills, software skills, or aren't current on what AI is doing to technology, then they have to rethink how they're approaching their job search. So great, you guys, so if you're in that place of how do I adjust, you really need to get super serious about getting clear and mapping out what you're going to be doing, because the more focused you are, the better focused you are, it'll get you to where you want to go much faster. And so here are a couple example places you can go. So specifically for people in Pinal County, because again, this program is sponsored by Arizona at Work Pinal County. Thank you so much. You can go to the Pinal County Economic Indicator website. On your email of resources that you guys are going to get after today, this afternoon, these links will all be there. So don't worry about even writing them down if you don't want to. It will be in your email. So there's a lot of great stuff about Pinal County and what industries are hiring, what it looks like. You can go to that website to do some research. If you are in Arizona or wanting to be in Arizona, ArizonaJobConnection.gov/job seekers. So this link, AJC is what they call it for short. The AJC, you can put your information in there, and there's job searching tools, there's career pathways, there's a whole bunch of tools available for you that you can utilize in there. ONET, somebody even mentioned that earlier. ONET is an online resource, from a federal government standpoint, or it's owned at the federal government, but has a whole bunch of tools that are available out there on ONET, where it can map different careers for you. It can give you ideas about maybe what is in demand and what you're looking for. And then this last tool is, it was created in Arizona. That's why I know about it, but it's for anybody. And so you don't have to be just in Arizona to utilize this tool. So pipelineaz.com, they have done a great job of helping create career pathways. So basically, you take a kind of a quiz. It's not a quiz, it's not a test. It's just an assessment basically, and it kind of understands what you've done in your past, and then it gives you career pathway ideas. It gives you different industries, different types of jobs that you could be a fit for. So I love that one from that perspective. They do have a job search component, but that's not utilized as much as the career pathway tool. It's really good. So that's another one I do encourage you to take a look at. So with your vision, your focus of what you want to do, really get clear on a couple things. What are your strengths and weaknesses? What are your values? And what are your priorities? So here's what I mean by that. I had somebody recently I was working with, and they said to me, I said, what are your top values? What are the things that are really important to you? And they said, I only want to travel about 20% of the time, no more than that. I have a young family, I'm married, and I don't want to, I want to be home for sports. I want to be home to take care of my kids, to be sitting down at dinner. They're still in that life phase. So I don't want to travel more than 20%. That was a high value. Another one was there was some flexibility built into the workday, because if he needed to, leave for a practice or a sporting event early, he could. And, there was some remote options. That's a value of his. And the other one was, salary, a certain dollar amount for the salary. So those were three big kind of values. He was really after his family was his priority. So instead of going after a company because of what they do in the community or their impact, he was going after a company that gave him a certain salary where he could be home with his family. That was his priority. And that is perfect. Because once you get down what your priorities are, what your values are, then you can really go after the jobs that make sense. So I'm talking to him. He had applied for a couple of different jobs and had gone through the interview process with one company. And he's like, this company, I applied for it, but I know there's probably more travel, but the salary is really high. So I know there's going to be more travel than 20%. And, the flexibility, you really have to go into the office. So I don't have a lot of flexibility, but man, that salary is so good. I'm like, all right. So he goes through the interview process. I had challenged him a little on that, but he was like, no, I'm going to go through, I'm going to do it. So he goes through the interview process. He gets the job. He gets an offer letter, and it was like double of the salary that he needed. He said his, baseline salary was. His travel, 80%. He was going to have to travel 80%. We're talking 3 whole weeks out of the year or out of the month, or, 4 out of 5 days, or how, I don't know how they had it structured, but like 80% travel, road warrior status, basically. So he was really struggling, and we were talking, and I said, listen, let's go back. What are your priorities? And he's like, I want to be home with my kids. They're playing sports. I want to have dinner. I want to be home on the weekends. And I said, I said, okay. So if you take this job at 80, but he's like, oh, but the salary. I'm like, all right. And if you take this job where you're traveling 80%, what's that going to do? He's like, I'm never going to make my son's baseball games. I'm never going to see my daughters dance, except on the one time a year where they have a recital on the weekends. And I might be gone for that. I don't know. And he said, my priorities right now in this life phase are my kids and my family. And he turned down the job. Here's the thing. He should have never interviewed for that job. He knew ahead of time he was going to have to travel significantly. But because his brain was like, oh my gosh, that salary is amazing, he went ahead and did it anyway. And had he gone down that path, he would have missed out on so much with his family, and it wouldn't have been worth it, and he'd have been miserable. He would have been back on the job search very soon. So really get super clear on what are your values and priorities. Right now, my husband and I are on almost the second half. We have a 16-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 26-year-old. The 26-year-old is gone. He's in South Carolina. He's doing great. My 18-year-old is getting ready to move, and my 16-year-old is driving, and she's working and going to school and almost never here. We are in a completely different place than we were 10 years ago, when I wanted to be home so that when they got home from school, I was here. I needed the flexibility. I wanted to work, but I also wanted to be home and around and flexible. But now we're in a different life phase. I want to be able to start traveling more, doing more. So I've started speaking a lot more nationally. I was in DC last week to speak at a conference. Like, I can do that stuff now. So think through, what are your values and priorities? And guess what? If salary is the number one thing, that's okay. If making, whatever your number is, $125,000, $90,000, $75,000, $250,000, whatever your number is, salary is your number one thing, write it down. And that can help you determine your job. You're not going to go and have a conversation about a job that's at $35,000. Don't even go through the interview process. Why waste your time? Write these priorities down. All right, so do the self-assessment, get super, super clear on, hey, this is what my main things are, and this is what my main things are not. Use the tools that, some of the tools we talked about. You can even go into ChatGPT and say, hey, what are some tools I can use to do some job assessments? It will give you a list. And then after you've looked at your priorities, and you've done some research on companies, you've kind of put together your list here. Research is the 10 to 20 companies also. What resources do you need? What training, or do you need a mentor? Like, what do you need to make that happen? What do you need to make that happen? That's part of what we wrote down today. You went through a little bit of the process, but what do you need to make that happen? And then start sharing with people. When someone says, hey, what kind of job are you looking for? Don't just say anything. Because what that answer does is nothing for you. It does not help you. It does nothing for you. And it doesn't help the person that's trying to help you with anything. Because anything, what do you mean? You like McDonald's? I saw they're hiring. Like, what does that do for me? But if you say, I am looking for a position where, more in the program project management space, might even be like healthcare, because I know that's an industry that's growing. And I really want to make sure it's flexible. I want to be home with my kids after school. And, it needs to make decent salary. I want to make like 85 or higher. I've picked 3 healthcare companies that I've been targeting, Dignity Health, Banner, and I don't know, another one off the top of my head, a behavioral health facility. And I think I could really make an impact because healthcare is, I really appreciate our healthcare system and how it's saved my family in different ways. Like, you can start telling people this, and here's what happens. They're like, oh, I know someone at Dignity Health. I'll make an introduction. Or, oh, I have a client that works in healthcare, and he works with some of those types of companies. Let me make an introduction. Like, that's what it is. That's how you're sharing. You're starting to talk to people about your job search. You're not just saying, oh, I'll take anything. I just need to make money. I need to pay my bills. Like, you're sharing what you're actually looking for. All right. So that's about that part, the career assessment. Karen, yes, I'm going to answer that in just a second. We're going to talk AI in just a minute. The next step here is on resumes. I'm just going to answer a couple high level things that you must have for your resume to make it through the applicant tracking software. Now, this is not a full resume workshop. I'm just giving some high level stuff. So first of all, let's talk about the format. So your resume format, write this down. If you have not had a professional do your resume, and I'm talking about an actual professional, not like Aunt Sally who hired people, but like a real professional, then write this down, because this probably, my guess is not how your resume is done if it's not done by somebody who actively does this for a living. From a font size perspective, that's how big your characters are in the resume. You want like between sizes 10 and 12. Okay. Oh, yay, Haley. Isn't Lori amazing? I imagine that's who you took the session from. But between 10 and 12 on font size. And then from a font type, Arial or Calibre are pretty standard. Don't use anything with sans. So sans has the little feet, and it's really hard to read. And it doesn't get through the applicant tracking software very well. It doesn't convert. So somebody said to me, when you redid, no, I didn't redo the resume, but somebody redid their resume once, and they're like, it's so plain. I'm like, yes, because that's what gets through the applicant tracking software. We don't want a whole bunch of colors or pictures or graphs or you don't need all that stuff to get through the software. Length, there's debates here. 1 to 2 pages is good. 3 pages if you're more like in medical or dissertation, doctorate kind of things. Sometimes the CV is needed, but 1 to 2 pages is good. Do not feel trapped. I've been hearing it a lot more often, so I don't know where this is happening, but candidates are telling me over and over that they must be at 1 page. I'm like, that's not true. Because I interviewed a guy yesterday, and he didn't have major accomplishments on his resume because he didn't want to go past 1 page. And I said to him, this candidate was referred to me from a hiring manager. They said, hey, this guy is really talented. I want you to talk to him. I was like, all right. I was going to decline him because he didn't have the experience on his resume. And when I talked to him, I said, our hiring manager said, I needed to talk to you because, you have the talents and the skills, and I can't wait to hear, because your resume doesn't have any of this on it. You guys, he sent me the wrong version of his resume. He applied with the wrong version of his resume. So he had removed all the stuff that was actually applicable to that job. So no, Haley, they're wrong. They may be I probably have Arizona at Work people on here, and they'll validate this. 1 page. If anyone's telling you it's required, they're wrong. Here's the thing. When you put your resume into an applicant tracking software, it doesn't care how many pages it is. If it has keywords, that's what they care about, is the match there. And so make sure 1 to 2 pages, don't get stressed out about it. And then you want to have a resume that's in chronological order. So you go from the most current employer down. Okay. And so most current employer, That's your top experience, and then down. You don't want to really mess with like what we call functional or combination resumes, because employers are really looking at what is your applicable experience and does it match? Yeah, Rhonda, most people can't fit on one page. And so 2 pages is totally good. And then you want your focus to be on your main resume, the one that you're just kind of tweaking when you apply, really focused on the applicant tracking software. So it doesn't need a ton of fancy, you can bold things here and there if you want titles, whatever, but it doesn't need to be fancy. You need to have really good accomplishment statements, but that's your applicant tracking software resume. Now, if you are emailing your resume out to people, maybe you're a creative person and you want to fancy it up. Okay, totally okay for ones that are going in front of people's faces, like you're emailing it. But anything that's going to go through the applicant tracking software really needs to be pretty plain to get through. So you want your contact information, and here's what you need on your contact information. You need your name, 1 phone number, 1 email address, and then your LinkedIn URL. Those are the things you need on your, now, also you can put your city and state for where you're from, which is a good idea. And sometimes you must put your address on there because in the applicant tracking software, it grabs it. But if you're applying on LinkedIn, or I'm sorry, on Indeed or the big job boards, please do not have your home address. That is a security issue. And so your name, email address, LinkedIn, and 1 phone number. I would encourage you to do a cell phone number because people tend to like to text. So that's your contact information. And the other really important thing about your contact information is a lot of times when you pull a template from somewhere, so this Julie will answer this question. When you pull from a template, oftentimes people will put their contact information in the actual header of the document. So you know how when you open a Word document and you double click and it gets you into the header, or you double click and it gets you into the footer? You do not want your contact information in that header or footer, because the applicant tracking software often has a difficult time reading that. And it can't read stuff that's embedded into a header or a footer. So when you go look at your resume, what I want you to do is to make an edit on your name or your email address, see if you have to double click to get into it. If you do, then you got to remove that. You've got to get it out of the header, because companies are not getting your information. They're not, not all of them. Some applicant tracking software can read it, but many cannot. So put your contact information on the actual document, not within the header. Your title and headline of your resume should match the job description for the most part. So if they're calling it a project manager and you were a director of programs, use project manager as the title because to match it. If you were an admin, but they're calling it a coordinator, use coordinator. Then of course your work experience, chock full of really strong accomplishment statements. Accomplishment statements are the things that show under your work. So they show that you did what you do really well at the company. And you're going to want to use numbers. I'm going to talk about them in just a second. And then your skills. You want to incorporate those skills we talked about earlier, both technical and professional skills. You're going to want to incorporate those into your resume and base it on the job description. So go look at the job description and see how you can incorporate the skills that they want into your resume. Hopefully you can do it through your accomplishment statements under your work experience. A little bit more on those. Most resumes and online applications are rejected, when they're rejected because of formatting, which we just went over, some of the main formatting things, or they don't have the right keywords. They're not a match. They're saying you don't have the experience we're looking for. And those are the resumes that never get in front of somebody's eyeballs. These are resumes that are rejected and you get the basic, like, sorry, we're moving on to different applicants, or you never hear back. So you want to make sure that your resume matches the job description. And that is how the keyword search will work. All right, and I'm going to give you some tips on that. We're going to talk about AI in just a minute. So when you're developing your accomplishment statements, these, again, are under experience. You put your company that you worked for, and then you're going to have like three to five bullets of things you achieved while you were at that company. Did you make them money, save them money, increase productivity, or make people happy? Those are all really good things to do and to talk about. There could have been other things, but these are really good ones to kind of focus on. And if you did any of that stuff, how? How much money did you save? How many customers did you serve on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? How did you increase productivity? What did you do? So in these statements, you're going to want to have what is the result, what's the action you took, and the result of that action. You want to make sure that those are in your accomplishment statements. All right. Yeah, and some other good tips from Haley online there in our chat. So that's the resume. Again, high level. I encourage you to take the resume workshop deep dive if you have not yet with Lori Norris, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. And the thing I love about when we go to people like Lori Norris, who is a certified professional resume writer, recertifies every single year, keeps up on the current trends and what's going on. They know what they're talking about because this stuff changes all the time. And so we saw somebody mention that on a website they were on recently had old information or had one-page resume. Listen, that doesn't mean that organization is a bad organization. Not at all. They're trying to help people. But there's only so many resources, and just like a doctor isn't a doctor in everything. So our resume writers that we work with actually know what they're talking about because they are up on the current trends and information. And so that's why I say when you can go to Lori's class, you can look at our webinars that she's done already. You guys will get that link also, and watch one of her workshops. Or Brenda Mariah is another one we work with. It's excellent. They know what they're talking about. You can come to any of our Career Connectors events. We do one big one a month, and you can talk directly to a professional resume writer that can say, hey, adjust your resume here, do this differently, tweak this, and they'll help you through that. Okay, so that's on the resume side. I want to talk to you about networking for a few minutes because networking is just the magic of finding the best job possible. So when we go through a job loss, a layoff, we're job hunting for some reason or another, whatever the reason. Immediately, what most of us do is we go to Indeed.com, we go to Monster, we go to somewhere online, and we start searching for jobs and we start applying like crazy people. We're like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? I lost my job. Oh my gosh. And we just start applying. That's what most job seekers do. It's developed for two reasons. One, we're scared. And so we're just trying to apply to as many jobs as we can. And two, we just don't know what else to do. So it's like, hey, let's do this. I got to get a resume together and do this. So that's what we do. And so that's where most people go and start with applying for jobs. You know what the employer does? That's the last place they look. The first place they look is kind of internally. So do I have anyone on the line that, you can put this in the chat, anyone on the line that's ever hired people before? Have you ever, had to hire staff for any positions previously? Okay, David, yes. Laura, yep. Okay, we have some people on the line that have hired before. If you have a really, really good job, when you're like, I'm going to be working with this person, like 50%, 60% of the time. And basically, the work that they do is going to be a big reflection of me. And so really want to find the right person. When it's a job like that, what hiring managers typically do is they'll go, who do I know? Who do you know? Employees, who do you know? Like, who do you know? Because they can get referrals of really good people. And it doesn't even matter if the employee, that person is in active job search or not, they're going to make a referral like, oh my gosh, I know somebody who would be great at that job. Like those jobs, those are like the cream of the crop jobs. Those are the jobs that people want and desire. And so the employers become a little bit more protected on getting the information out there. Sometimes, a lot of times, actually, they'll never even post a job. They're only going through their referral network. That happens a lot. So have any of you ever worked for a company that offered an employee referral bonus? And if so, I would love for you to drop in the chat how much money you made for a referral. So some companies are like $100, some are $1,000. Like for every person that gets hired and you've referred them in, there is a dollar amount that they're like, hey, you can have a referral bonus. So does anyone have that? 2K at the most. Laura got $2,000 for one of her employee referrals that got hired. So why do companies do that? They do that because one, it saves time. It saves money. So Marla got $2,500 for one of her employee referrals. They do that because that referral, it actually saves them money. People that are referred into a company stay longer and have a better match to the job than people that they get on the job boards. Think about that. They want people to be referred into jobs. That's the desire of an employer. Guess what? An employer does not enjoy going through hundreds of resumes because they're frustrated with that process, which is why we use an applicant tracking software to say, here are the top, whatever, 20% that are a match based on keywords. Saves us a lot of time. And so how can you move from desperation and like applying to everything online to getting to the top of that, where the employers have the really good jobs? Well, the answer to that is through a version of networking. And even when we started today, there was somebody on here that said, I hate networking. I'm terrible at it. I hate it. Bro, I hate it too. Listen, I run the second largest networking organization in Arizona. First is Arizona State University alumni. We're second. And I hate networking. I am not kidding you. I already told you I don't do small talk. It's really hard for me. When I go to a party, my husband leads us and makes the rounds and talks to everybody. And I kind of am on his shirt tails and we'll talk when it makes sense. But so I'm telling you this because if I can figure out how to network and make employer connections, so can you. And here's what you can do. Instead of thinking about going to a networking event and handing out a business card, get rid of that thought. Go to either a networking event or go have coffee with friends or previous colleagues, whatever, and get to know them. Be curious, ask questions, get to know them. Don't go in with an agenda of this person is going to give me a job. Go in with getting to know them, especially with your list of 10 to 20 companies. This is where you can make this happen. That list that I hope, if you have not written down to put together your list of 10 to 20 companies, do that. Because that list is such magic for you because you can go through that list and go on LinkedIn and start to see who you know that works at that company. Who are you connected to? And you can start to make connections at that company. You can start to ask friends if they know anyone that works at those companies that you're interested in, especially if you see a job out there that is a match for you for that company. Then you can start to hit up people and talk to them about that job. So people want to work with people they know and like. And because job listings bring in hundreds or thousands of resumes, companies really want to focus on who is being referred into them or who they know that is going to be a good match for the job. Yes, Socorro, people do pay to be on Indeed and Glassdoor, but not always. So Indeed is a crawler. And what that means is people can pay to be on Indeed for sure. And they can also get like top results when someone's looking for, let's say Headspace paid to be on Indeed. Headspace pays to be on Indeed so that when someone types in project manager, the Headspace results are going to come to the top because they paid to be out there. But also Indeed, because it's a crawler, goes out and crawls and looks at, all the jobs. It scrapes the websites and it will post all the jobs. That's why it's a really great research tool, because when it's scraping jobs, it doesn't mean that they validated those jobs. It also doesn't mean that when that job is pulled down, they're pulled off of Indeed. They may still be sitting there. So again, go back to the websites of the companies, apply there, but make a connection. If you can apply on LinkedIn and see who the recruiter is and start to talk to them, that is the best way. Okay, so networking is getting to know people. It's building a relationship. It's not handing out a business card saying, here, take my card, call me when you want to. Here are some of the places that you can go to network. Absolutely any kind of career events, any kind of job fairs. In fact, what I would encourage you each to do right now, I'm going to drop the process into the chat. One of the things I always encourage people to do when they come to these type of events, is to connect. You connect with each other. And one of the ways you can do that is through connecting on LinkedIn. So if you have a LinkedIn profile, what I want you to do is go ahead and jump out onto your browser and go to LinkedIn and get your profile URL. And what that means is if you go out to LinkedIn and you click on your picture, usually it will take you to your profile page. Whatever that URL is in the top search bar, that's your LinkedIn URL. Copy that and paste it just like Haley did. And then what you all want to do is connect with each other. All right? You're building a network. You can help each other. You can even put, when Haley, hopefully Haley, you'll connect with me if we're not connected, and Haley will connect with me. And then in the connection note, she'll put thanks for the workshop today. So that reminds us how we know each other, because if Haley then wants to be introduced to maybe someone at Dignity Health, because I know the VP of talent acquisition at Dignity Health, she sits on my board. I know her well and have for a long time. Haley's like, oh my gosh, Jessica knows the VP of talent acquisition at Dignity Health. I'm going to ask her if she'd do an introduction because I just applied for this job. That's how it works. That's networking. It really doesn't have to be this long drawn out process where you're building relationships for a long time. It's, meeting people, being kind, being reciprocal. When someone asks for something that you can do, you're doing it, and then they're doing it for you. You're helping each other. You're connecting. So you're going to job fairs, you're going to career events. Do not dismiss job fairs. Do not dismiss them. I know some people are like, oh, job fairs are so lame. Fine. You can think that. Maybe you think there's not a fit for you. But here's the thing, especially if one of your companies is at that job fair, even if they're not there hiring for a job that you want, it gives you an opportunity to build a connection with a recruiter or with a hiring manager. Make it happen. We were hosting a job fair for USAA a couple months ago. And in 4 hours, we helped them hire over 100 people. It was amazing. Well, we had this one candidate who wasn't a fit for either of the roles, but she came in anyway and talked to the hiring managers and got an offer for a different position in a different department because she showed up. Like, show up to these places and show up to these places and go and be there and make a connection. You never know. You just never know what's going to happen in the future. If you went to a college and you have an alumni network, that is a fantastic place to do some networking. It's really cool because you don't know where all your friends or alumni have landed. And it's a great place to connect. Chambers of commerce, any kind of business meetings, professional associations. If you are, let's say you're in HR, then what I want you to do is make sure you're connected to associations that are for your industry. So HR would be SHRM, the Society of HR Professionals and Managers. You want to make sure you're connected to them. Regardless of what your industry is, what I would encourage you to do is to go out to ChatGPT. Well, I'll get there in just a sec, but go out to ChatGPT and you can put in, tell me 10 associations that are for HR professionals located in Arizona or wherever you're located, and it will list out 10. And these are the types of ways you can use a system like ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or one of these AI tools to help you. Same with conferences. Attend conferences. And with some of these, you can even email them ahead of time and say, hey, I am in career transition. I got laid off, and I'm wondering if you have any guest tickets available. And oftentimes they will give you a guest ticket, so no cost. So you want to look at some of that. Julie, I would really go to ChatGPT and ask those questions, because I can't answer that because every industry, every job is different. For example, there are great job fairs specifically for veterans. There are great job fairs specifically for healthcare. We're hosting a really great job fair for people that live in Pinal County at the end of this month. So it really depends. You want something that's targeted. The hardest part are the job fairs that are just wide open. Anyone can attend with any job. That's the ones I think that like people walk in and are going, there's nothing here for me. But if you can find, when you find targeted job fairs, those are great ones to go to. All right, now let's talk about social media. And social media is, LinkedIn. You must use LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn, get on it, build a profile, because the high majority, over 90% of recruiters are using LinkedIn. And companies all continue to use it. It is your career facing, your business facing professional profile. Even if you feel like, listen, I am not I'm more on the trade side, I'm not on the professional side, doesn't matter. Get a LinkedIn profile. It works. And you're able to connect with people in all kinds of industries. If you have a fully completed LinkedIn profile, you have a 71% higher chance of getting a job interview. Companies will sometimes use LinkedIn, maybe not even from a sourcing candidate standpoint. I use it for validating a candidate. Like they'll apply to something and then I'll jump over to LinkedIn to see if what they said on the resume is true. So it is your professional feature, okay? All right, so that's LinkedIn. And then just make sure whatever you're putting out on social media, whether it is LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, whatever it is, that if a company found you on social media, they would be like, yes, that's a candidate we could hire. They're not going to embarrass us. Okay? Because when a company hires you, you are representing them in some way. So just do a cleanup, even if you think your stuff is locked down and no one has access to seeing your profile unless you've approved them. That's just not true. And fight me on it, right? There are ways around that stuff. We can see what you put out on social media. Sometimes someone is tagged and your stuff is in there. Like there's all kinds of ways. So make sure what you have on social media is something you would be proud of, that's not going to embarrass you, and that if a company saw it, they're not going to pull your offer. Think about that, at least for this time frame while you're job searching. We have to tell that to my kids all the time. Like, is that something you would be proud of if an employer or somebody saw that? So the ways that you can maximize LinkedIn is to make sure you have a fully complete profile. When you're building out your LinkedIn, usually on the right-hand side, they change the software all the time, but most of the time it's on the right side are like steps for you to take. Fill out those steps, because once it's fully filled out, your title, your picture, your experience, you have connections, that kind of stuff. Then when recruiters are doing searching, the profiles that land at the top of their searches are the ones that are fully filled out. So you want to have your profile fully filled out. Build your network. If you start at 0, have a focus to get to 50. Okay, get to 50. 50 kind of is the first marker that says, okay, they're connecting, they're valid, they're an actual person. Actually, I just saw a report. I haven't read the whole thing. I just saw the headline, so I don't have the actual data on this. But apparently, and this came out from LinkedIn and SHRM, both of them sent me, I got an email about this yesterday, that there is a significant rise in fake job seekers. Fake people applying for jobs, so bots applying for jobs. So one of the ways you can combat that, because you're a valid job seeker, you want the employer to know that, is by having a fully filled out profile and having connections. So build your network to 50. Once you get to 50, the next marker is 500. When you get to 500, that's kind of the place where you can almost have connections to anyone because of the way that LinkedIn works. You have a first connection, and that's the 500 people you're first connected to. And then second connection is exponential. So it's basically people that are connected to your first connection. And then third is like way exponential from that. So they don't show the numbers anymore, but or they may, I just don't, it's different. But years ago when I was pulling this data so people could see how this worked, at the time, I think I had probably 3,000 or 4,000 first connections, and my reach was over 3 million people. And that was first, second, and third connections. Now I have over 20,000 first connections. So I can't imagine, like, for the most part, I feel like I can reach somebody at a company because I have spent time. That's me. And the work I do, LinkedIn is really, really important. So I need to have that. You don't, or not, maybe you don't. I don't know. I don't know you, but everyone has a different goal. If your goal is just to have a professional face and to make some connections and to land this next position, then focus on getting 50, and then 500 would be pretty much your ability to connect with anyone or any company you want to. And then the last tip I have on LinkedIn here is really focusing on 5 minutes a day to build your LinkedIn network and to be valid on LinkedIn. And so what I mean there is there's 3 things you should do on LinkedIn. And this is an example of a profile. My good friend, Brenda Mariah, she's amazing at what she does, but here is a really good layout. So you can screenshot this if you'd like. You can also go connect with her. You can look her up on LinkedIn and use it as a model for how you want to build yours out. But here's what you need to do on LinkedIn to be valid. Every day, spend between 5 and 15 minutes. That's it. You don't have to spend a lot of time on there. You can obviously spend more time on there. But here's what I'm going to encourage you to do. 1 is go out and like a post or comment on a post. Okay? Find something out there. Let's say you see somebody that works at a company that you want to work for, and go out and comment on their post. Go out and like the post and comment on it. That's 1. The second one is connect. Connect with at least 1 person a day, up to 5. Connect. Okay? So like or comment on a post, like and comment on a post, connect with someone. And then the third one is write a post or reshare a post. So here's how you're relevant. You're liking and commenting on a post, somebody's post, somebody else's post. You're making some connections, and then you are building your own content. You are writing a post or you're commenting on somebody's post. If you can do that between 5 and 15 minutes a day, especially while you're in career transition, while you're looking for a job. What that does is that will obviously build your connections. It will build your relationships by talking to people, commenting on their stuff, and it will make you valid. And it will continue to keep you in the feed of LinkedIn. So when recruiters are looking, hey, I'm hiring this project manager, and they go to your profile and they see that you've made some posts recently about project management, or that you're attending some trainings, whatever, it validates that you're real and you know what you're doing. So if you're not sure what kind of content, start by just sharing other people's content. Things like if you see a post I've made, and maybe today, I didn't make a post for this workshop today, but I've done other ones in the past, and you're like, you can reshare my next post about a workshop. I'm actually making one today because of our event tomorrow. You can go in and say, hey, I'll see you there. I'm excited. And you can reshare that to your network. Things like that get you popping up on the feed. So like and comment on one post a day at least. Make some connections and create your own content. Either write your own post or reshare somebody else's. That's how you can be relevant. And then this I put in the chat, but connect with each other. I know there are some requirements on LinkedIn. They keep getting stricter and stricter about how many credits you have. So you have to be, I think if you're a second connection with somebody, you're able to connect with them. But if you're a third, then you have to use your InMail or something like that, your credits. And so I'm not exactly sure what the rules are because they change all the time. But as much as you can, connect with people. Okay. Now let's talk AI for a minute. So AI, artificial intelligence, is changing the way that organizations work, including the way we apply for jobs, the way we connect, all of this stuff. So there are multiple AI tools. Here are a couple of them: Chat, GPT, Bing, Bard. In fact, Bard, I think, is old. Now it's Gemini. I think that's what it's called. But the ones that are utilized often are ChatGPT. It's by far the most utilized. And then a Microsoft Copilot. So those are two. And I'm going to put those links in the chat for you. Those are two that you can use. And this information will be also on the email you're going to get. And so Copilot, if you have Microsoft Office 365, then Copilot is free. If you have, if not, then I don't even know if you can have access to it. But ChatGPT is free. The base model is free. And then there's an upgrade for about $20 a month. You can use either. Start with the free, obviously, first. Laura said you use JobScan. I like that. Just be really careful with JobScan because we're finding some major flaws in the information you're getting from JobScan. So I don't have all the details on that. I'm just hearing from people within the career coaches world that it's creating some really not good results in different things. And so just be careful, Laura. You're smart. Just make sure you're reading everything that comes through. And I even have JobScan on my file as a recommendation. So ChatGPT is a really cool one you all can use, and it can help you create updates to your resume. It can help you prepare for interviews. It can give you ideas for your accomplishment statements. It can do a lot of this stuff, but you have to understand there is a side of it where we have to be very careful. So if you haven't used it at all yet, I encourage you right away to get on to ChatGPT and you start asking it questions. Like it's very similar to Google as far as, putting information in. And so one of the ways that you can use it to make it really, really work for you is, this is one tip I'm going to give you today. There's a whole bunch. I'm sending you on the email will be I think it's 15 pages, a 15-page document that is broken out by job search topic, like resumes, interviews, networking, so job search topics. And it'll give you ideas on prompts, information you can put onto ChatGPT or any of your tools. And for example, a big one I love is, you get your resume to where you feel like it's pretty good. Okay, like it's good. You take that resume and you put it into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT now allows you to upload documents. So you can upload the document or you can copy and paste it. And then take the job of which you are interested in applying for and copy that job and paste that into ChatGPT, and then tell it, ChatGPT, you tell it this, update my resume to be the best candidate for this job description. The prompt is something like that. Or update my resume to be a match for this job. And what ChatGPT will do is it will look for keywords on the resume and integrate them into your resume based on your experience and what you've done. So, which is amazing, right? Because it's going to save you so much time for every time you have to update your resume. The caution is, when it sends you back your resume, it'll take maybe 30 seconds to do this. It'll give you your resume back. And you want to really go through your resume and make sure all the changes that it did are actually true. So sometimes it'll say something you're like, that's not really right, or I didn't do that. And so you'll have to edit. So make sure you edit, because you have to be honest. And, and recruiters can tell when you just submitted a resume and all you did is a copy and paste with AI. Your stuff still needs to be personalized to you, and it needs to be a match for the job. So those are some of the tools. Let's see, where are we at on time? Okay, let me see if I can get through this, and yeah, I won't be able to today. But when you get your email, open up that document, and it will be super helpful for getting some of your job search stuff down. You can have it help you write cover letters. If you have to submit a cover letter, you can have it help you create an email to an employer. There's so much you can do with ChatGPT. Okay, the other thing is, Laura, what's narrative and it likes to say, please now. Yeah, yeah, you got to kind of watch. I like ChatGPT a lot, and I have created threads, different areas. So I have a thread specific for career connector events, a thread for my recruiting process. I have different threads. And it gets to know you essentially based on the information you put in. And so it can kind of start to speak in your voice. And so it's awesome. And it's also a little, is it a little scary also at the same time, but it is what companies are using in the future, completely changing their processes. And they're becoming more streamlined because of it. So those are the tools. What we went over today was we just took a big high-level glance at the market and the trends. We talked about how to think like a hiring manager. They're looking for competence, character, and chemistry so that you are a culture match for them. And then we just touched on some of the tools when you're in the job search. So what I want you to do right now is, hopefully you took notes, at least the ones I told you to write down. I want you to think about the stuff you heard today, and the stuff you wrote down, maybe some of the stuff you wrote down or some of the stuff you just like kind of parked in the back of your head. What is one thing you can commit to doing by next Friday in the next 9 days? Based on what we went through here, what is one thing you can do that will help you take a step in your job search? And then once you think of that, write it down in the chat, and let's see what are some of the ideas some of you are going to do. Maybe it is taking an assessment, the DISC assessment. Maybe it is asking some questions to ChatGPT. Maybe it's coming up with a list of employers. Maybe it's updating your resume, creating a LinkedIn profile. What are some of the things you're doing? And the other thing, just based on what I just said, if you don't have a list of 10 to 20 companies, you can go to ChatGPT and say, what are 10 companies hiring in Arizona that have remote jobs for accountants, whatever. You can put that in a ChatGPT and it will come up with a list. So it can help you create that. Okay, some of the DISC stuff, that's great. Oh, Laura, great. Reach out and start having conversations and networking, updating LinkedIn in the resume. I love that, Rhonda, committing to finding a communication class, working on LinkedIn. That's so good. LinkedIn as well. Working on a self-assessment, really getting clear, Arsenia, clear on the type of job you want and the focus you want on your next career. Those are so good, you guys. So good. So I want to give you some tools and tips, some additional workshops and events that you might want to have. So again, this was a high level kind of job search essentials, what you need to know, the main things. Lori Norris is doing a resume workshop on April 16th, and that's a deep dive. You're going to go into your resume. You're really going to, she's going to help you format it. It's such a good workshop. So that one is Wednesday, April 16th. On Thursday, the 24th, I'm doing a deep dive on interviewing. And you'll walk out of that workshop with a list of answers you can give to many interview questions. So we're going to work on that. If you know somebody that needs this job search essentials workshop, the next one I have is in May. And then we're doing a salary negotiation one. Actually, May 22nd, I think we're changing the date. Is that the new date? Hold on one sec. No, we have another event. We actually have a huge career fair that's happening on that day. So we have to move that virtual one. So I think it's going to be happening the next week. But now that you're on the distribution list, you will get this information. So you can get to that on that website and it will be included in your email as well. Again, all these are at no cost and you can register for any of them. If you are in Arizona, specifically Pinal County, again, thank you to Arizona at Work Pinal County. They're offering these workshops through May for people. And then also, if you're in Pinal County, here are additional services that they provide. So you can contact them by phone or a website. They have interview prep. You can do mock interviews, do career assessments. They have additional support for veterans and job seekers with disabilities. There's a lot of options. And so go ahead and check on that. If you are in Arizona at Work, you can Google Arizona at Work and you can get into the system to really connect with other opportunities as well. Then Career Connectors, we are all about empowering you, providing resources so that you can connect and find the right job for you. Here are 3 events we have coming up. We do them once a month. We bring in 2 keynote speakers, and that's for an hour and a half. And then the last hour, we provide coaches, so resume writers, LinkedIn coaches, career coaches, etc., that you can have conversations with and connect with. So this one tomorrow, she's talking. So the title is Intentional Serendipity, but really what she's talking about is how you make the, oh my gosh, I can't believe we connected happen. So some on networking, how you put yourself out there, the branding side of it. She's a branding expert. And so this is a really great event I encourage you to come to. And then Amanda Miller, certified professional resume writer, career coach. She's going to talk about 6 components of a successful job search. So that is tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And there'll be people on the line you can connect with and network with. And so then we have one every month. And if you sign up for any of these, you'll start to get the information. If you didn't check in earlier, make sure that you do check in. And Wendy, if you wouldn't mind, or Sharon dropping in that URL one more time, Thank you. If you did not check in, please do so. And again, make sure you get the information from today. You'll get a link on this webinar. We will send you the link. So if you want to play it back, you can play it back at any time. This URL, this QR code rather, is for my site. If you want to connect with me, just information about me is out there. I do a lot on social media, especially on LinkedIn, also on Instagram, where I do a lot of job search tips and tricks and just kind of where the market is going and that kind of stuff. So would be happy to connect with each of you that way. All right, we are at the end of the day. I have a couple minutes left. So if any of you would like to unmute yourself, if you have any questions, I'm happy to take questions. Or you can put it in the chat and I can answer the questions from there. So do I have anyone that has any questions for me?